Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoterica and our side series on a technicality. And today what we're doing is taking a look at a PlayStation 1 that is being very temperamental. Last time I used it about 4 months ago, everything worked perfectly fine, took it out of storage, plugged it in, and it's having slight issues booting discs, but more often it's not playing any of the soundtrack from the games themselves. So obviously it's going to probably be a laser problem, but I want to walk you guys through how to diagnose these issues, how to potentially repair them, and deciding whether or not that repair is even worth it in the first place, because these are quite old and the laser mechs are known for going on them quite often. But you'll see here on the first boot, when it was sitting around, it didn't boot for some reason, but all I did was turn the power off and back on, and it boots right into Point Blank. It's the Japanese version, and the reason I really want to fix this is because it is a Japanese version I keep around for all my Japanese games. But you'll see here, this FMV, even if I turn the volume up, I have no audio playback. The PlayStation 1 is booting the game code perfectly fine, but anytime the PlayStation has to access the CD to play soundtrack information, it just does not work. I've tried multiple games, and nothing I do makes a difference. But weirdly, if I put an audio CD in, the entire track listing comes up, and it will play that audio CD perfectly fine. So it's definitely something to do with the laser, a focus issue, the laser may be getting weak, maybe we can trim the pots on it to see what's going on, but we know that the game is working because it does boot into it, and we know that it's playing audio CDs. So the question is, what is causing this machine not to work with actual game discs? Put Bomberman Land in right here and you'll see that there isn't anything other than the data track, but it does find it quite quickly, which is interesting. And right now I'm playing Street Fighter EX3, and the game plays perfectly fine. I have sound effects, but none of the background audio tracks work whatsoever. But the fact that it's working like this, we know that there's nothing wrong with the GPU, there's nothing wrong with the CPU, all the capacitors are fine on the board. There's some issue with the CD mech itself. And I did try the little trick back in the day, because this is a very notorious problem, of putting the PlayStation 1 on its side, and at one point I even turned it upside down to see if it works, because those are old tricks back in the 90s to make them work, and nothing I did worked. It froze on loading. And you'll see here that that audio CD is actually dirtier than the rest of them, so the CDs aren't scratched, there's nothing wrong with them, it's just something that happens. And as we take it apart, I got a PlayStation 1 for Christmas one year when it was brand new. I opened the box, it was broken. It did not show any video except garbled graphics, so we tried everything. Had to return it to the store, took forever, ruined Christmas. PlayStation 1s are notorious for having issues. But taking a look around in the front, all the caps are fine, but we do have that laser right there, and that's the first thing we want to focus on because that spindle is moving freely. The disc is spinning up, and we have this little ribbon cable with a potentiometer right there to adjust some of the laser mech, and then we have the power cable running down there. Now to clean the lasers, I use 91% isopropyl alcohol and a really fine microfiber brush. The lens I'm shooting this on is a $2,000 cinema lens. I clean it with lens cleaner and this cloth or alcohol, so if it's good enough for that lens, it's good enough for a PlayStation 1 laser. Some people will say that's not the way to do it. I've done this for all my consoles. I've cleaned lenses that have cost $30,000, $40,000 on set. It's always fine. Just wipe back and forth, don't put too much pressure on it, and you'll see that it is nice and clean. What we'll do here is just hold down the reset button of the console and power it on just to see if cleaning that laser made any difference whatsoever. Sometimes it is just down to a dirty laser, but the fact that the audio CD played kind of rules that out, but let's always work from the easiest problem to the hardest. And you'll see here as I adjust the volume again, we still don't have any playback on Point Blank. The FMV loads perfectly fine, it's streaming data, no issue whatsoever, but anytime it tries to look for soundtrack, it doesn't work. If I put my finger back on that door, within like 1 to 2 seconds, the FMV starts playing again, so we know the laser is picking up the data track perfectly fine. And then if we put the CD back in, the audio CD, again, everything works. And that's exactly what happened before, so we haven't really changed anything. But taking a look up here, we do have this one potentiometer on that ribbon cable right there, and that's going to be our first point of adjustment. Now you always want to keep track of where they started. I have the benefit of having this all on video, but take a photo to see where the potentiometer is because you don't want to forget where the initial point was. Now pop it right back in, hold your finger on that reset button or the door open button, and again we still don't have any audio, so we've made some changes but nothing has in fact worked so far. So we'll continue to adjust that potentiometer to the point where the games stop loading, and we'll try to back it off from that just to see how far we can push the adjustment before it, and air quotes, breaks the machine, because unless you go crazy out of line with these, you can't really do too much damage, but it is a very precise adjustment. Don't go crazy on it, and always keep track of where your potentiometer started and the adjustments you make. So if you want to reset everything back to stock, you can, no issues. Photograph everything and just use that as a reference. And you'll see here as it spins up, it does not load the disc. So maybe we've gone too far. We'll just back that adjustment up a little bit and we'll see if we get it to boot. Now the rule of thumb is when you have to start adjusting laser pots to make the games read, your laser is weak and or dying. So this is a temporary solution. Sometimes that temporary solution will last 1 or 2 years, even more. Sometimes it'll last 1 or 2 days. It gives the console more life, but we're putting more power into certain components than would normally be what the console expects, so it can degrade over time. There's no real danger of it catching on fire or anything, but it isn't going to be a permanent solution. Again, even upside down, it doesn't work. So what we'll do is we'll pop the power leads off right here, and they are taped down with this little bit of felt tape that we'll pull back, and then you'll go ahead. The ribbon cable has a little adjustment in it that you pull up. That plastic tab there, if you pull it up with your fingers, the ribbon cable will come out. It can be tight in there, but as long as you pull that black plastic tab up and don't pull too hard, you'll be able to pull the laser mech, no issues whatsoever. Taking a look at the bottom, we'll get the model number, so if we do want to buy a replacement, we don't have to open it back up because we forgot, and all I do is snap a photo of that. That way, when everything's back together waiting for parts, I know what it is. And taking a look at the track grease here, it's nice and smooth, so that track should be moving around perfectly fine. I rubbed around my fingers, and nothing physically looks wrong with this laser mechanism. The motor's spinning freely, the lens is clean, the grease is still greasy, it's not dried up, so we don't see anything. So next thing we can adjust here, we have the bias pot and the gain pot. The bias pot is what you're going to want to adjust secondarily, and then the gain is what you're going to want to touch last. It's really hard to see, I had to focus in deep there, but never adjust the console with the power on. You'll see that I take the power lead out and put it back in as I adjust those pots, and I play around with everything, and I still don't have audio. And then I pushed the bias a little too far, and there's a clicking in the motor there, just not spinning the disc up correctly, so I know that's been pushed too far. No matter what I adjust on this laser, it will not play audio, so I know definitively it needs to have a replacement. The issue with that is they are not cheap and easy to find. You can get them all day from China, but if they don't work, you're kind of screwed. This one here is $40, and it's saying it's the same mechanism, but you can clearly tell it's not. And this one here, with shipping from Canada, is going to be about $50. Now, if you wanted to buy a working Japanese PlayStation 1, you can get them between $50 to $70. And if you wanted to get a PlayStation 2 that's Japanese and plays those discs, they're like $110 on eBay, and if you know people on forums, you can get one for like $75, $80. So the reality is, when I talk about fixing things, I talk about, is it worth it? I'm not going to throw this away, maybe I'll find the part, but I'm not putting a $50 untested laser into a machine that I can buy functioning for $60. Sometimes you just don't fix them. But otherwise, thanks so much for watching. We'll be back on Sunday with a video, and on Tuesday as well. If you have any questions, leave them below. Do us a huge favor, hit like and subscribe. But this PlayStation 1 is lights out. Bye-bye.